to produce the ultimate reality. And that's how it comes to pass, that you create your own reality. And that's why you and I can encounter this same event and have remarkably different realities with regard to it. That's how life works. Now that we understand how life works, the next question is, how can we get it to work for us? See, it's one thing to understand the mechanics of the mind and the system of the soul, but it's quite another thing to actually use them to make life work for you. That's what we're talking about here. It's what we've been talking about here from the very beginning. So let's take a look at just two areas of all that I've just covered here. We can't look at every single point because it's a lot. But let's look at two areas. Let's look at emotions and thoughts. Conversations with God made it very clear to me that we can change our thoughts and we can change our emotions. Of course, if we take any one of these elements, the data, the truth, or the thought, or the emotion, or the experience, if we change any one of those elements, we can change our reality, and in that way change our lives. We can change the way, by the way, change changes us. Life is about change, of course, as we know. I once wrote a book called When Everything Changes, Change Everything. And the point of the book is that in order to really experience the reality in life that you wish to experience, you want to begin to develop the ability to change the way change affects you. Because change is always occurring in life. It never stops occurring. But what we have the ability to do, that very few people realize, is the ability to change the way change affects us. So that's why I wrote the book, Changing Change. It's about when everything changes, change everything. If you want to know more about all of that, by the way, you can go to, there's a website called changingchange.net, which you might find interesting to visit. Well, so now let's get back to where I was here. The real question here, after understanding all of these mechanics, is how can we use this information to change our reality and therefore change our lives? And ultimately, by extension, by the way, to change the whole world. And the answer for me is to find a way to change our thought and to change our emotion. So your thought will change. Your thought about any particular event. We're talking about the events of your life now. So let's just say that you were deserted by your father when you were 9. Or perhaps something else bad happened to you in your lifetime. And you're holding an idea about that event. Or let's say you're holding an idea about a present event, something that's occurring right now in your life. Either way, you can change your thought about that event by, here we go again, elevating your truth with regard to it, by bringing your truth up. Your imagined truth is the lowest form of truth. Clear? Your imagined truth is the lowest form of truth that you can hold with regard to any event, a past event or a current event. So the way you change your thought about the event, because remember now, your thought emerges from your truth, is to elevate your truth from the imagined truth, at least, to the apparent truth, what is apparently so. And that's where we do what I call in my workshops and retreats, drop your story. That's when you drop your story, because your story about the event is your imagined truth, yes? So even if you think, by the way, your story is true, even if your story is true, hey, it's true. My story is that my father had an automobile accident and he died when I was 9. That's true, Neil. That's not my imagined truth. That's the actual truth. That's what's apparently so. But what I'm saying to you is that the actual truth, if I could put those two words together, the actual truth, or what I like to call your true truth about the event, is never known by you until you bring in the wisdom of the soul, the perspective of the soul, the perception of the soul. That enlarges your data bank. such that your truth becomes entirely different with regard to any event of your life, past or present. So your opportunity is to elevate your truth from the imagined truth, or as I say in my retreats, get out of your story. Get out of your story about that. You've written a whole story around that. Get out of your story and go to the apparent truth, just the facts. Nothing more, nothing less, just the facts. It is true your father did die when you were 9 in an automobile accident, but everything else around that is your story with regard to it. And then if you can, with regard to any event, past or present, elevate your apparent truth to the actual truth. Try to live in your actual truth if you can, but if you can't, at least get to your apparent truth. The apparent truth creates your observed reality, as I said before, which is a very high place to be. A very high level of beingness is to be in the observed reality formed by your apparent truth. But if you can get to your actual truth, wow, that's the way to change your thought. So we're going to talk here in just a second about how to get to your soul so that your soul can bring to your mind a new perspective, more data, more than just your past, factual past data, and more than even your judged past data, but your heretofore unobserved or unknown data about the event. And that's how you change your thought. Now, once you change your thought, you can change your emotion. By the way, you can change your emotion without doing any of that. Did you know that? You can change your emotion about any event at any time you wish. You can simply arbitrarily choose an emotion. See, most people think that emotions are things that come over us. I was overcome by emotion. But in fact, masters choose and select their emotion. You can arbitrarily. See, what God said to me was, with regard to all of these elements that produce our reality, we talked now about your experience, we talked about your emotion, we talked about your thoughts, we talked about your truth, we talked about your data. All of these elements that produce your reality. What God said was you can change any one of these elements, any one of them, and you can change them arbitrarily, and masters do. And so masters are people who make an arbitrary decision to have a different emotion about an event. And by simply changing that element, even if you don't change any of the other elements, by changing that element, you can alter your experience, which will fundamentally shift your reality with regard to any event in your life. So what I come here to tell you is that you can select a new emotion arbitrarily about any event that you wish. Your assignment for next week is to pick an event in your life that was fundamental and foundational to who you imagine yourself to be today. Pick the one or two of the most important events of your life. Put them in your course notebook. And then in a second column, write down what emotion you have, what emotion comes up for you, what emotion you have had and are holding now with regard to that event. And then ask yourself this question: if I could choose any different emotion, if I could have any emotion I wanted, I know that I can't, I know that I'm not in control of my emotions, but if I could choose any emotion that I wished with regard to that event, which emotion would I choose? And write that down. And then, this is going to be an interesting assignment now for you, an interesting assignment. And then, pretend that you feel that way about the event. Just make it up. Just pretend that you feel that way, the way you would like to feel about the event. And allow yourself to experience that emotion as if it were true for you. And if you're like many people, you will discover that you can actually step into the feeling of that emotion as if it was your true emotion, simply because you have decided to. Now, you know, the experience that I like to use with regard to this is a simple one. It's a simple life experience. I like to talk in terms of going to the dentist. When I was a child, I'd go to the dentist, and I felt an experience. I felt an emotion. I experienced an emotion called fear. I didn't like being in the dentist chair, and I was afraid.